What was your most difficult boundary you had to set? That's a pretty good question. We talk about that all the time. Kelly.
I don't need to say I'm Kelly every time.
No.
Okay. There's so many. I read that question a second ago. But the one that's sticking is the be brief, be kind, be gone. And it was a boundary for Emerson and I on both sides. So I guess you could say for respect, but I got pulled into conversation every time. The kid was really good about talking me out of what I was trying to tell her she needed to do, regardless of what that was. So setting that boundary of no is a complete sentence. This isn't a conversation, and from my end, I didn't need her to understand, right? The boundary was for both of us, right? For her to accept what I said and be, respect that this is what I'm saying. And on my end, that from the codependency side, I don't need to talk to her until she says that she understands. Like, more talking isn't gonna make it better. And so it was really a boundary for both sides, but that was, and then Joe's, be brief, be kind, be gone. Because I would talk and talk and talk and talk. And it wasn't working. And so just being willing to break that cycle from both sides was really our biggest boundary, because she likes to talk too. So.
Awesome. Rex?
The hardest boundary that I've had to give and do is around people pleasing. And every time that happens, every time I want to people please and hold a boundary, it's very difficult for me. Probably, if I had to pick one, it would be around my promise to give my son an education and pay for his education. And when it came time for me to say that I'm not going to pay for your education unless you earn the right to, earn that privilege to have that education paid for by working a program, being sober, and being honest and respectful. And he was unable to do that. And so that led me to need to hold that boundary for myself and say, no, I'm not going to pay for your school anymore. And that was really hard. And it continued to be hard because he would relapse. He would go back, and then he would relapse. And he would go back, and he would relapse. And having to say, no, I'm not going to pay for your school was very difficult for me. And anytime I feel like I need to please and hold a boundary similar to that is also difficult.
Cool. Thanks, man. You want to talk a little bit about what it was like being the kid and the benefit of your mom drawing some hard lines?
Yeah, so I was thinking about it on the way here. So I kind of found out that I was entitled. I didn't, and I mean in a way that, like, we didn't grow up with a whole lot of money. It wasn't, I want this, so I ask for it and I get it, like that. I guess my view on entitlement was kind of skewed. But yeah, I was always under the impression that, my parents can't kick me out because I'm a minor. I have to be here legally, and they're, all this kind of stuff. And, I had these defense mechanisms and well-crafted excuses, and, I'm ready to, die on this hill. I'm not getting kicked out. I'm not, but being on the receiving end of these boundaries early on, it was infuriating because I couldn't control it. And my mom was starting to finally have a backbone and starting to actually follow through with things she said she would do, which was a new phenomenon. And as much as it made me angry, it also made me feel seen. Someone's actually seeing what I'm doing. Someone's watching my behavior. I'm being called out for things that I've been doing for years. These unhealthy habits that have just become, commonplace for me are now being called out, and they're, my mom's now saying they're not okay, all this kind of stuff. So, as angry as I would get initially, you know, in hindsight, looking back at all the boundaries and all the shots that my mom would call on me, I eventually got extremely grateful for them. And I guess maybe this is like weird. Maybe, you know, not every kid is like this, but eventually, you know, whenever I got about a year sober, maybe a little less, I would start having like, you know, shots called on me for random things that I wouldn't even be called, you know, I wouldn't even assume were like bad things, you know. It didn't make me, they weren't dishonest or anything. I would just like forget to lock the door whenever I came home at night. And I'd get a shot called on me, go feed the homeless for a week, you know, like that kind of stuff. There used to be a place called Way Station at Palmer Episcopal. So I'd go feed the homeless. And I was just still being seen for every single thing that I did. Because I am a wiggle room finding guy. If there's an easier way to do something, I will do it, and I will milk it dry. I will do whatever I can to, you know, until I get called out. You know, and it's gotten a lot better over the years, but yeah. So eventually, I started being grateful for it, and you know, there were times where I would kind of start calling myself out on stuff that my mom wouldn't see me do. You know, I'm like, I just got to be honest because it's on my conscience. I forgot to lock the door. I forgot to, you know, do this, that, and the third. And you know, in that case, I learned that the consequences were a lot less harsh if she didn't find out that I did something. If I was honest that I did something. So yeah, that's it.
Cool. And I can confirm, as Sean's former boss, that he is a wiggle room finding kind of guy. And so I'm just gonna piggyback off of that real quick, and I'll keep it brief because those are some great responses. But the thing from like the counselor perspective or the clinical perspective, the thing that I really want to impart on you guys is that one of the things that is going to have a positive impact on your family system or the relationships in your family long after you guys are no longer in Cornerstone or your kid is done seeing any counselor or whatever, is you guys as parents being able to have some real boundaries, being able to say no. You know, most of the time, by the time a parent kind of gets to our program, they're pretty beaten up and bloodied and bruised, and they've been in the battle, and their parenting self-esteem is all beat down. And so learning how to say no and mean no and do what we say and say what we mean is easier said than done. Simple maybe, but not easy for sure. But having those lines in the sand and being unwavering with them will hugely impact your kid and your family for years and years and years to come. And that's one of the reasons why parent-driven recovery, what we call PDR, that concept is so important. And we're